Highland pipes. Not all of them, but most of them. Also, most of them are local. So, I mean, you're local, but have you ever played Highland pipes?
I did, actually. I played them when I was, I guess, was junior high school.
Where, and when, and tell me all about that. In fact, actually,
Sure.
Mark, take me even further back. Like, where'd you grow up, and was there music in the household when you were little? And tell me all about yourself.
Well, I grew up in upstate New York, in the area around. I was born in the town of Oneonta, which is sort of northwest edge of the Catskill Mountains.
Oh, cool.
And grew up around Utica in the Mohawk Valley. Then we moved back to Oneonta at the end of high school. My earliest musical memory is of marching band, Highland pipe music. My father was Scottish and Irish heritage, and he had these records around the house, and that is literally one of my earliest musical memories, is listening to pipe band music. And at some point, I think I was about 13 or so, and I went into, and this was in the mid-'70s, mind you, and I went into a Woolworths, and they had this international section of records, and there were two records that I brought home that day. One was by the Chieftains, and the other one was a solo uilleann piping album by Finbar Fury. And I had no idea what it was. I just bought it, and I was just blown away.
Wait, you bought the uilleann piping one, right?
And the Chieftains.
Oh, you got both of them. Because I was imagining this like one of those fateful moments where you had one album in each hand and you're looking back and forth between them, like which one?
No. Well, and they both had uilleann piping.
Right, that's right. Either one of them would have led you to your destiny, huh?
Exactly. And I was like, what is that sound? Oh my God, that's amazing. And, at that moment, if I had known where to find uilleann pipes or instruction, I would have gone for it. I would have begged my parents. But this was the mid-1970s. There was no internet. We didn't live near a large diaspora community. I mean, my father was from New York City, and so there's a lot of that down there in the city, but not where I lived. And then I saw an ad in the paper for Highland pipe lessons. And so I persuaded my parents to drive me there and buy me a practice chanter. It was there was a little women's college called Kirkland College, which is now merged with Hamilton College, and they had a bagpiping scholarship, and so the student who had that scholarship was offering lessons. And and saved up and bought myself a set of Highland pipes and played through junior high and high school, but there was no band locally, so I was kind of on my own, and then by the end of high school, that kind of petered out. I discovered girls weren't that impressed by bagpipe playing.
Wait, I still have not been able, that misconception has still not been shattered for me, so I'm just going to plug my ears at that.
Yeah, don't let that dissuade anybody. I always just, kind of moved on to other things, tried to learn guitar and so forth, but, the uilleann pipes was always in the back of my mind, and then in 1982, I was in college, and I went to study in Dublin for a semester.
Oh, cool.
And I was, really eager to try to track down uilleann pipes somewhere, somehow. And there's a traditional music organization called Cultus Cultúra Éireann in Ireland, and they have branches in the U.S. as well, and they focus on getting music instruction for young people in traditional music, and they sponsor competitions called FLAs, and anyway, I went to their headquarters in Monkstown, which is just south of Dublin, and they were selling practice sets of uilleann pipes, which consists of the bag, the bellows, and the chanter. And I didn't have a lot of money. In fact, I kind of spent what money I had left for the rest of the semester on a practice set of uilleann pipes.
You think to yourself, boiled potatoes for me the rest of the time I'm here.
Yeah, kind of. Well, I wound up working in a pub because I needed to support myself somehow. I mean, I was living with a family. Anyway, but they turned out to not be really well-made pipes, and they weren't really playable, and I took them to a few different people, and they really couldn't get them going well, and so I tried taking a few lessons, but they really weren't playable, and at that point I didn't know what to do, so I kind of just gave up, really, until gosh, I guess it was around 2000 when this miraculous thing called the World Wide Web was there. And I said, I wonder if I could find anything about uilleann pipes on the web. And I looked it up, and sure enough, there were pipe makers with websites, and oh my gosh. So I started to get serious about pursuing it. And so I started up again when I was in my 40s.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, I know that there's, so speaking of like locally, were you in Utah at that point?
Yeah, I moved here in '96.
So did you pretty quickly find other uilleann-pipers locally as well, or did that take a minute? Because I know that there's not a ton, right?
No, there aren't. Yeah, in fact, it was kind of funny because right around the same time, I don't know if you're familiar with the Chiff and Fipple discussion board.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was just taking off, and I signed on, and I guess I must have had something about Utah on my profile. And a fellow reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm trying to learn pipes too, so let's get together." And his name was Brian Dobson, and soon enough, a whole bunch of us got together, found each other through this discussion board, and by that point, some of us had practice sets, some of us were still in the search for gear. And we got together, but there was no one in the state that we knew of who was really an experienced piper, uilleann-piper. And we heard tell of a guy named Bill Tiernan who lived down in Grand Junction. He taught at the state college down there.
Yeah.
And we invited him up, and he came up and gave us some lessons, and we were off to the races. That was about 2003, I think.
Is Bill? I know that there's a guy out of Colorado who makes sets and does reeds and stuff like that. Is that Bill, or is that?
No, that's Dirk. I'm not sure how you say his last name.
Right,
MEWES, Muse or something.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's in what's the place? Fort Collins.
Fort Collins.
I think he's around there, and I haven't heard this stuff. I've seen pictures of it, and it looks like really nice quality gear.
Yeah.
He's making. There was a guy that reached out to me last year or the year before who wanted to get into it, and he bought a practice set off of Dirk, and then moved to Boston, so I never got to hear hear them played. So
it might have been nice to encounter a practice set that worked really well, huh? After your first experience.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Yeah, and that's the biggest obstacle I find for people. A lot of people reach out through we have a Facebook page for the Salt Lake Piping Club.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to get into it." A lot of them are Uilleann-curious Highland pipers, and they, I want to check this instrument out, but where do I start? And that's the biggest challenge. I mean, it's not rocket science. Anybody can play the things, but it's a matter of finding a quality practice set from a reputable maker that actually works well. And of course, there's a whole issue of reeds and how well they do in Utah's climate and so forth. And that's the thing that usually dissuades people the most, I think, from getting started.
Yeah, have you, now that you're a ways into playing more seriously, have you done some reed science yourself? Do you do some reading yourself? Is that necessary, or have you just found makers you can trust that make stuff that work?
It's really a matter of, ideally, and one gets told this, to be a real uilleann-piper, you have to master the process of reed making, the dark art, as it's called, and I am terrible at it, and that's largely a function of the fact that I have never been able to invest the time into getting good at it, or perhaps willing. I would say that basically it takes a lot more time to become a good reed maker than it does to become a good player.
Yeah.
And, I have a job and family and all that, so I've just never been able to invest that kind of time in getting good at it. Now, there is one of the stalwarts of our club. He lives in Salt Lake, and he got really good at reed making. And so I've kind of leaned on him a bit, and my latest set that I've acquired I've had it since 2013, and the guy who makes those, he's one of the best reed makers in the world, and so far that reed has held up in Utah's climate, and I take it back east and it plays where it's humid, and so knock on wood, I'm okay for now. There's some people in California that, depending on who the maker of the pipes are, will read your chanters for you.
Yeah.
If you, there's a guy in Miami who does it. So, but yeah, that's a challenge. One of the challenges.
That is one thing that is, right from the start seems pretty different between uilleann pipes and highland pipes. Where I plan on going through at least 6 or 7 chanter reeds on my highland pipes every year, depending on how much I'm playing. I guess, is that mostly down to it being a wet system versus a dry system that it wears out more quickly?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, because these are dry reeds, and the design, I mean, there's no standardization. I mean, I remember the days of highland piping. You could go rifle through a box of reeds, right, for your chanter, and get 3 or 4 of them, and one of them will work okay.
Yeah.
With the uilleann-pipe reeds, because they're overblown into a second octave, and the what's called the scrape. So I mean, everything about like the dimension of the staple, which is a rolled piece of copper tubing, sometimes stock brass tubing is used, and the dimensions of the cane slip that's cut and the way it's scraped down. All of that has to be specific to that chanter design. And that chanter design in turn is based on whatever that pipe maker is using for a model. There are some classic makers from the earlier 20th century and from the 19th century that they base their designs on. And so it's almost as if the redesign, I mean, there's general parameters where they'll work in a lot of different chanters, but a lot of them are very specific to that particular maker and the way in which the bore is shaped in the chanter. So they're not transportable from one system to another necessarily. So yeah, they're just sometimes really super finicky. It's kind of frustrating.
I've having looked at some highland pipe music pre World War I, basically. There is what you might call a little more like sort of creativity or like movement, like a little bit of overblowing and stuff like that. And I have wondered before, like, uilleann pipes. I am also an uilleann-pipe-curious highland piper, and the cost barrier is usually what has held me back. And I have wondered to myself before, like, is what we need to have a military engagement in which uilleann pipes are used that would force them into a standardized design. You know what I mean? Force it into a mass-producible thing, and then on the other end, it would come out cheaper.
Yeah. Of course, it's hard to march with uilleann pipes because you play them sitting down. But yeah, I mean, and that's been an endless topic of conversation. And there have been various efforts, I think, to kind of standardize the production to some degree.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the challenge is that, so for the most part, we're talking about concert pitch instruments, which are pitched in D, tuned to A440, which is kind of the modern standard, and that only evolved in the 1870s, 1880s. There was a couple of brothers from Drogheda that emigrated to the States in the 1870s, the Taylor brothers, and they designed the first, what we call now, concert pitch bores, which are kind of the standard that you play in sessions and so forth. And they were designed to compete with other instruments in dance halls and settings where immigrants were gathered. And so they were louder, had a wider bore, larger tone holes. But previous to that, all the instruments from the golden age of pipe making up through the famine in the 1850s, they were pitched anywhere from B flat to C sharp, just depending on the maker. And they were really designed to be solo instruments. So there was, like I said, no standardization. I think now with there's some people that have experimented with computer-aided design and CNC lathes. I actually have somewhere a chanter that I bought from a young fellow in Boston about 15 years ago who was experimenting with injection molded chanters, and it plays really nicely.
I saw Bagpipes Galore has a molded one that they sell.
Yeah, I mean, there's what's his name now? Well-known Highland pipe maker in Scotland. McCallum, is it?
Yeah, they just did an uilleann pipe with Fred Morrison. Is that
yes, that's the one. And apparently, whatever design he's got is dialed in and fairly standardized.
I wonder if that must, because they're selling it, I was a little surprised at how cheaply they were selling it. I thought, they must have figured out how to get this onto one of their CNC routers or something.
Yeah, I think that's what they've done because, the bore is so unique to each chanter design because they have to undercut the tone holes and like they have all these gauges that I've talked to pipe makers who make these different size gauges to measure precisely the bore of historic chanters to reproduce that sound. It's like trying to copy a Stradivarius. But he's got some design dialed in, and I've heard really good things about them. But the dark side of that whole process has been pipes made in Pakistan.
Of course,
and
yeah.
whatever you do, don't go near any of those. Yeah, there you go. And I've had heartbreaking stories from people that have reached out to me who spent a lot of money on those things, and they're just unplayable.
I got lucky though, Mark. I only bought like a goose, like a practice set.
Right.
And it turned out, while the chanter is utterly unusable, other than like it does function as a back scratcher because it's got the knob at the end, you know.
Yeah, there you go.
But the bellows, actually, I've been using for years now on my Scottish small pipes. They work great. And I actually just recently realized that the bag was tight enough that I tied my Lindsay system chanter into it, and it's functional. So now I feel pretty good, actually. I actually came out all right. But I'm sure that a lot of people have. We see it on Highland pipes as well. Darn it, they show up to lessons, and it's like, oh no. It's like, I spent $400 on this, huh? Darn it.
I know. Well, and I've had people show up with full sets that they spent a couple of $1,000 on. And I'm like, dude, I can't in good conscience tell you to sell it to somebody else, but this is never going to work. And they ship them with like these little plastic, essentially practice Highland chanter reeds. Yeah. That are just, by definition, they aren't going to overblow into the second octave. So, and then they had for a while. I met a few people who had bought these. They were like practice chanters, like Highland practice chanters, supposedly Uilleann pipes.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those. They have like a gooseneck on the top, though, right?
Yeah, like a tube you blow into or something, and that was just such an abomination. I'm like, who sold you this?
Well, I'm glad I never bought one, because I have looked at those and thought, like, well, do I need that? Is that a way to start learning, instead of getting a goose? Can I just get a chanter?
The answer is no. Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the challenges is just, it's money. I mean, I think to get a decent practice set from a reputable, known maker, you're looking at $2,000 or so. And for a lot of people who don't even know if they're going to stick with it, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing,
I mean, that's why it's tended to skew towards like middle-aged dilettantes like myself.
Yeah.
But I think it's getting better. I mean, there's more and more pipe makers in the game now, and there's more and more access to gear. The mothership organization of Uilleann Piping is called Na Peabody Uilleann, and they're based in Dublin. And at least in Ireland, they've done a really good job of commissioning practice sets from makers and having sort of pipes on loan available to young people. Yeah. Excuse me.
No problem.
And there's some clubs in some piping clubs in the U.S. that are kind of doing that as well. I've had half sets and chanters I've loaned to people over the years. Biggest challenge for me is I'm not very good at reading them, so that's kind of a crapshoot. But yeah, that's the biggest obstacle right there. But if you get a decent practice set, there's a guy and I think he's still making them up in Seattle, called David Day, who was making something he called the penny chanter.
The penny chanter, yeah.
Right, and
I've drooled over his website for so many hours already.
Yeah, and those are really good, affordable entry-level instruments, and they work. I mean, it's sort of a like nested tubing, step bore kind of thing. I'm not sure what exactly he does. That was actually my first chanter. Oh yeah. Although I sprang for the rosewood version for some reason because I wanted it to look cool. Yeah, but you so it was a good experience though. That's a solid a functional instrument. I mean, I've heard him playing it before, and I'm like, well, of course you can play it well, man. But could I play it? So. Yeah, no, it worked pretty well. There's a guy that had one down in Utah County, and he got a bag of bellows somewhere else, I think, and he made cut a drone stock into the bag, and he used a sprinkler valve or something and some like just brass tubing, and had used some of the easy drone reeds from Highland pipes. And really? For his drone? It actually sounded pretty good. I was blown away. I was like, holy smokes. Oh, there you go. You get resourceful and get your set a lot cheaper then, huh? That's right. Well, that's awesome, and that's good to know because that is I have eyeballed David Day's stuff quite a bit myself, and
I'd imagine. See, I'm projecting here, I guess. I'm just imagining that, like, well, if I think this is interesting, and if I fantasize about hopping onto uilleann pipes, then the rest of my Highland Piper friends probably also, right? So I'm just assuming that they'll want to hear the same things I want to hear.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of people in that same boat because they're pretty iconic. They're gotten to be pretty well known. The sound of them, and
yeah, it's such a sound.
I mean, just for my mind, because I listen to a lot of Irish music, and I have ever since I was a kid, and they really blend in with other instruments in a way that's harder to do with Highland pipes. So we have sessions in Salt Lake and up here in Ogden, and it's fiddles and flutes and guitars, and it just works well.
Well, and since that came up, could you tell me a little more about those? Because that's how I got connected to you. I don't remember how exactly initially. Maybe I had reached out to the Pipers Club about.
I think you might have.
Get started.
Yeah.
That's probably.
Yeah.
But I get your emails about the sessions, and still intend to come someday.
Yeah.
Tell me about the sessions. What's that like?
There's been people playing Irish music for a long time in Salt Lake, long before I got here. So there's this older generation of musicians who were here since the 70s, like Dave Sharp and Steve Hollander, Mark Jardine, Mark Cantor, who does the Fred and Fiddle show on KRCL, Kate McLeod, and those folks were like the original sort of founders of the Irish music scene. And I think the first major session that I went to, we were at a bar called the Republican in Salt Lake on South State Street for about 15 years, and that was twice a month. And they went out of business during COVID, but that was, it was kind of an acoustic train wreck, but it worked, and they were really generous in hosting us, and they were always very welcoming, and the patrons seemed to enjoy it. And when they went out, there was a hiatus during COVID, and now we've started up a monthly session at the VFW bar in Sugar House, and that's second Monday of every month. And there's also a house session. There's a guy from Ireland who plays fiddle. He lives in South Jordan, and there's a gathering at his house every Thursday night. And I have a session up here at my house. It used to be pretty regular. It was a learning session, so kind of slower pace, because there's a lot of people getting into Irish music at the same time.
Yeah.
And all kinds of instruments. And that was, maybe 2005 I started that, I think. And that was at an art gallery here in Ogden. And then when they closed, I moved it into my house. And it's less regular now. It's maybe every couple months, depending on my schedule, but I usually do it on weekends.
What was there was a band that came through recently, I think from Ireland. Was that did you host them at your own house?
Oh yeah, the Southwest Ramblers. Yeah, that was. There's a whole circuit of house concerts, and I was contacted by a fiddler in Logan who met some people at a workshop in Tacoma or someplace, and there's a pretty good Irish scene in Albuquerque, and there's a guy from Cork down there, Jim Crowley, who wanted to set up like a house concert trail up from New Mexico through Utah and eventually up into Oregon. And so the first venture in that was this house concert. There were two, one piano, accordion, and one box player from Ireland, but two of them, and then two local musicians from Albuquerque, including this phenomenal young fiddler named Grace Broadhead, who's just, somebody to watch for. And we had some great house concerts. There was one in Provo. I hosted one, and then there's one in Logan.
Well, Provo's like my backyard.
Well, there you go. Where are you based?
I'm in Orem.
Okay, right next door. Well, in fact, there's a great uilleann-piper down there too.
Joe Perry.
Yes, if you know Joe, yeah. And he's got a Highland pipe band as well.
Yeah, I've played Highland pipes with him a bit, and my family and I we've gotten to see his Irish group play a couple times now.
Oh, Roger Dove, yeah, exactly. Very good. Yeah, and of course, over the years, the piping club was probably more active in the past than it has been the last 5 years or so. I think COVID kind of took the wind out. Excuse me. COVID kind of took the wind out of our sails a little bit.
Wind out of your bellows, huh?
Yeah, there you go. The air out of our bellows. Yeah, we sprang a leak.
There you go.
but we would have workshops because, I mean, the thing is, when you're an isolated piper, you're trying to learn on your own.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I wound up going to workshops around the country. The Irish piping workshops are called Tionol, Tionol, which is an Irish word for gathering or something. And there's workshops in, there's some really great ones. There's one in upstate New York in a town called East Durham, which is called the Irish Catskills. It's sort of like where all the Irish from New York City went on holiday in the summer, back before cheap flights to Disney. And there's people, I mean, just amazing players from all over, like, Boston, Philly, DC, Chicago. They come down from Canada. There's Chernobyl in St. Louis every year. There's a couple on the West Coast. So there's more and more of those kinds of things for pipers. But then the other thing is you could also, like, local groups will bring in, and that's kind of what they do. They bring in well-known pipers from the States or from Ireland. Okay. And we've had some really good guest pipers over the years. I would usually bring a fiddler with them so that we can make some more money off the fiddle players. There's usually more of them. And there's a lot of great fine duets that play together, and so that works out really well.
That's such a good strategy. I mean, I'm familiar with doing a similar thing with within the Highland Pipe competition group, right? We'll bring in Highland piping instructors and stuff for workshops and stuff. The Waspaba branch will, and so, like, I've been wanting to get together some small pipers, and my thought was, like, it'd be so fun to do the same thing, with Scottish small pipes, bring in some accomplished players and stuff. But then it's like, it's so niche. It's hard to gather enough people. But if you add fiddling, then you could get a sudden influx of more humans with $50 a pop. You can get more people.
Well, exactly. Just make it viable, because I mean, it's hard if you're paying for somebody's flight and putting them up. I mean, it's just hard to make the numbers go otherwise. And I've rented venues in Salt Lake before for concerts, and it's just a challenge unless you've got some way to reach a larger audience. So
to be an eccentric billionaire, that's really the dream.
yeah, exactly. I'll be the Uilleann-Pipe benefactor. All I have to do is play the lotto.
Yeah.
Hey friends, sorry that this episode's coming out a little bit late. Just a bunch of crazy stuff going on, but happy to have it out. And just wanted to say real quick that Mark is a real trooper. This is probably the longest that any interviewee, sorry, I had to think about that for a second, that any interviewee has had to go between doing an interview and having the interview go public. There's usually a lag there because it takes me a while to do the post work and everything like that, but Mark's, I think, has been over a year. And anyway, I hope it's enjoyable. And the main thing I wanted to just say real quick with this note is that I've got a new design up over at bagpipeswag.com. You know that song, The Pumpkin's Fancy, by Terry Tully, the legend? Well, how about a fancy pumpkin? Go over there, and I got fancy pumpkin mugs and t-shirts for $15 just through the end of the month. And then on Halloween, I will do a drawing from the Patreon supporters for the show, and one of them will win a fancy pumpkin t-shirt. So if you want to be in the drawing and future drawings, feel free to support the show. Remember to follow us on social media, send an email if you have questions or ideas for future episodes, and other than that, just have fun, and thanks again for tuning in, and see you later.
No, Mark, I want you to feel free to speak, like, very openly and freely. I'm curious where you did do some Highland piping, and now you do Uilleann piping. Like, I've read articles before where folks talk about that who have done the same, gone across along the same trajectory.
Right.
And they talk about feeling like they've moved from marching band to jazz band. Like, and it's not to say that one is better than the other. They're different things, But like, what do you feel like is the difference for you personally, right, between the two styles of playing, the two instruments, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is, like, I never had that marching band experience because I was never in a pipe band.
You're always by yourself.
I was always by myself, yeah. I mean, certainly the Highland music, the Highland piping tradition is much more regimented, literally. The book that my teacher used was the Scots Guards, and it was just like this note, that grace note, that setting. And so the idea that you can kind of just play the tune in different ways as you want to was kind of alien to me when I started doing this. And I started before I got my first set of pipes, I just started picking up the whistle again because that's a great gateway instrument. Because a lot of the ornamentation techniques are the same, but I mean, for me, it's fundamentally about the music.
When you do use the whistle, and I just mean to ask this because you know my friends who are listening who might be interested. It's like, well, what can I do in the meantime until I buy my set? You know.
Yeah.
Do you find that a low D whistle is most useful, or does it not matter so much? Just
doesn't matter. Gotcha. You can be, you know, one of the squeaky ones if your family will put up with it, or low D. I mean, the low D is almost harder to start on because you have to use what's called the piper's grip, which comes naturally to pipers, I guess. But
yeah, that's the thing. The population that I'm talking to, like that's how we're going to hold our whistles anyway. So no big deal.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It's just the covering the tone holes can be a bit of a mechanical challenge. But
it was there was a whistle player on the show recently, Sean, who pointed out that with the low D whistle, you could even use your pinky for the bottom one, and that gets you, I guess, even closer to uilleann piping, where you'd have your 4 lower fingers down to play a low D.
You could. I mean, that would really wreck my head. I don't think I could figure that out because I also play the flute, the Irish flute.
Oh, of course.
I picked that up a few years after I started the uilleann pipes, and partly just because there are some tunes that sit better on the flute than they do on the pipes. I find I can generally play faster without screwing up on the flute.
Interesting.
And sometimes, you know, pipes just aren't appropriate depending on the mix and the crowd and the acoustics. I mean, they're not super loud, but they can still dominate in some ways. And so it makes it harder for me to hear. Like if there's a fiddler sitting 3 chairs over, I can't hear them play necessarily. So it just depends on the music. But I mean, ultimately, it's just different. I mean, you know, you have to be obsessed by Irish music. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, if you're not really into Irish music and you want to hear this and you're fully in love with these tunes, for God's sake, don't waste your time in the uilleann pipes. Get a real instrument that you can transpose to other genres of music in case you get tired of Irish music. You know, get a fiddle, whatever. You know, because you have to be obsessed with the music. And uilleann pipes, like Highland pipes, you know, they're suited to play one kind of music.
Yeah.
And if that's not what you're driven to listen to and play, well, why would you bother? Because it's a bit of a challenge in a lot of time. So I enjoy the flexibility. You know, you can play tunes different ways. You can swing it a certain way. The ornamentation is really a matter of individual taste. I mean, you can listen to reference recordings of great uilleann pipers, but I also listen to, you know, fiddle players and box players and flute players, and some of the versions of the tunes that I'll play are just based on that, because it's whatever the version is I have in my head that I've been listening to. And a lot of the ornamentation of the other instruments are actually imitating the pipes anyway.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I feel like I've noticed that. Maybe I don't have a very good, well-attuned ear for it, but I feel like I have noticed that with fiddles at least, where it's like,
like the crams and the rolls and it's, you know, I mean, the whole grace note thing, which they're called cuts in Irish music for some reason, it's a lot less complex than Highland piping. So that's, you know, for a Highland piper, that's the least of their worries. The one thing that people tell you is if you're a Highland piper, don't use the C sharp finger all the time to cut things because it sounds really monotonous after a while. Like, you know, you're encouraged to like mix up your use of cuts. And you can sort of lift the chanter off the knee and get different tonal effects, and there's a lot of subtleties to it, stuff that you can do with that instrument that you just can't do with the Highland pipes.
Yeah, that's part of what's really intriguing, at least to me, is that, you know, you can, when you're listening to uilleann pipes play, it's not just a change in notes. Sometimes you get that like really cutting, like sudden. It's like it seems like it's always at the lower end of the hand, at the lower end of the scale. It really slices through everything else.
Yeah, barks and pops and vibrato and all this other stuff. I mean, it's, you know, it's all those little things that add up to like, okay, this person really knows what they're doing with the instrument, and they're often very subtle. Yeah.
So when learning any instrument, it's a little messy, especially when they're like squeaky instruments, you know, like fiddles, bagpipes, high whistles. These are some of the worst instruments to be in the same house while somebody is learning them. How did and how does your family handle your uilleann piping?
They're actually fine with it. I mean,
That's good.
I think when I started, my youngest was like 4 years old or something, and it never bothered them. My cats hate it.
Do they really?
Yes. Yeah, the dog's happy with it, but the cats, they just flee. But it was never really an issue. It was just a matter of finding a little corner where I can play. I mean, I suppose sometimes it was a challenge because I like to play in acoustically bright environments, so like a hardwood floor in the dining room, for example. But if other people are doing stuff, it's like, could you please go downstairs? But it's carpeted down there and it's cold. I don't want to play down there.
Being ousted or ostracized to the cold.
Yeah, exactly. Being sent to exile. But no, it's been, everybody's pretty much embraced it. I mean, my daughter plays harp, and I've tried to get her to do more Irish music with me. She fell in love with Breton harp music, she tends to play more of that, which I don't. I play a few Breton tunes on the flute, but that's about it.
Yeah. I've only recently become aware of the Breton. No, wait. I always mess this up. Is this Eastern Canada or Western France?
Western France, Brittany.
That's right.
Yeah.
See, and that's what I always mixed up. There was
Cape Breton Island.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. Which also has a unique piping sort of like culture and history and stuff, and so I often get the two mixed up still. But both cool stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
The drone reeds I recently got actually came from Brittany, from Xavier Bourdeu, I think is how you say it.
Oh, really? Okay.
And man, I like these reeds. They sound great.
Huh.
He's an uilleann pipe maker as well. He makes uilleann and highland pipes. And let's see. Xavier, Xavier is his name. He makes really pretty uilleann pipes.
Interesting. I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, it's a very French last name. Bordaux, I think is.
Okay.
I think he and his brother work together, but yeah, very pretty stuff.
There's a few other French makers I'm aware of. And an Irish guy, Brendan Ring, who lived in France forever and makes pipes. There's pipe makers all over the world now. I mean, one of the greatest pipe makers is a guy in Japan, Makoto Nakatsui. Andreas Roge is in Germany, and he's been making fabulous gear for decades now. So it's really taken off that way. And the challenge, again, with a good pipe maker is that as soon as they get a reputation for quality, their waiting list jumps from like 1 to 2 to 5 years to... I mean, the set that I'm playing now, I waited 8 years for those.
Wait, 8 years?
8 years, yeah.
Holy moly.
These guys stopped taking orders, like, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Like when the wait list extended beyond their realistic lifespan?
Pretty much, exactly. And then you just had to say, look, I actually got to know them. They're based in New York and Vermont, respectively. David Quinn and Benedict Kohler. Just kind of, they want to know that you're serious and you're actually going to play the instrument and not just, store it under a bed and try to resell it or something, I guess. But they just, once you get on the list, you just wait. And I had other pipes to play in the meantime, but they're just gorgeous. And I don't deserve them, but I'll take them anyway. Yeah.
This is minutia that we shouldn't need to do, but I should not have tried to spell Xavier Bourdeu's last name because I spelled it wrong. It's actually Boderiou.
Okay, very good.
Just in case anybody was listening and taking notes.
Yes, there you go.
Now, the uilleann pipes, come in various. You can kind of keep adding regulators to them. What kind of set do you play at this point?
I've got a full set in C and then a set in D. And so the first set I actually bought with drones and everything was a half set in C. And because, again, like the classic 19th century sets were often pitched somewhere, like I said, B flat to B to C sharp or whatever. And there's been a real renaissance of what they call flat piping. These are called flat sets because they're like, lower keys than the concert pitch D.
Right. I was just talking to a guy who was excited about his B flat set that he was going to get.
Yeah, I mean, and they're like just a gorgeous buzzy sound off of them. They're just fabulous. You get on a wooden floor. I had a fiddler friend who would tune his fiddle down, and just so the strings are kind of looser, and it's the best thing in the world. I mean, it's not really ideal for session playing, although if you go to some channel, they'll have like a B session or a C session, and people bring their B and C chanters and whatever.
C chanters are like a hot thing in Scottish small piping right now. I don't know if you know about this.
I didn't know that. Huh.
I think it's mostly because of Bridget Campbell. She's kind of a big deal in the small piping scene, and she likes C sets. But it's like suddenly everybody, like all the makers are having to, I'd imagine, like kind of scrambling to adjust so that they can sell, because usually they sell their D, their A, or their AD combo, right?
Yeah,
and a lot of makers are adding C as an option, as a third option, or even as combo option and stuff. And I did wonder, as I kind of looked around and see this takeoff of popularity of the key of C in small piping. Is this going to correspond to uilleann-pipes maybe a little bit?
Well, I think, because it would be interesting to see if, how well you could play together. And I've never really tried to play with a small piper or a highland piper before. The uilleann-pipes, I'd like to give it a try. Mm-hmm. There's a few folks around here that, I think it's just a matter of finding the right key to play things in.
Yeah.
But that could be really a lot of fun.
It's more pleasant than D on small pipes, Like an uilleann-pipe chanter in D goes down to D, but the small pipe chanter in D goes up to D, you know what I mean? And
I see what you mean, yeah. Okay, gotcha, right. Yeah, that could be interesting.
Anything that brings that down a bit, I think, is probably good for the small pipes.
Yeah. But, I mean, the flat piping is really taken off in recent years. So, but to the regulators, I mean, I added the regulators later for that C set, and then I ordered the D set and got that. So altogether, there's 7 reeds in a full set. So 3 drone reeds, tenor, baritone, and bass, and they're typically cane. Some people use easy drones, but generally not so much. Some people use like composite bodies and like a spruce tongue, and there's different ways of doing it. But and then you've got 3 more essentially chanter reeds in the regulators, and so tuning is kind of a nightmare.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine what a headache.
You put a rush in each regulator. It's like a long.
They flatten the tone. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean you put bits of stuff on the rush under the tone holes to adjust each note individually, like blue tack or bits of string or foam, whatever you can use really. So again, it's one of those things to keep those things really in tune is it's a bit of time.
Yeah.
It's a bit of effort, yeah.
I was surprised, just from like watching uilleann-pipers play, I had been imagining that it would be like drones, like Highland pipe drones, with a single tongue reed inside, and that the regulators must be opening tone holes that were further up the drone, so it would, so then the tone that was coming out was no longer the low tone, it was a higher tone instead. I was surprised when I found out, no, these are a bunch of, you just have more reeds. It's just even more stuff.
Yeah.
It's so complex.
Well, no, the regulators, they have keys on them, and so they're like a chanter, but they've got these keys that you play with your wrist.
Right.
So it is like a chanter kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you just activate the key, and that's, there's a lot of ergonomics to it, to getting that right.
I've wondered about that too. Like, I watched Seamus Ennis play, in old videos of him playing, and I've got to wonder, like, how did he avoid just crippling carpal tunnel?
I know, right? And some people are made for it. They can kind of like play regs with their thumb on the lower hand on the chanter. There's a guy, what's his name? Anyway, he's from Ireland, Park McGovern. And if you get the right camera angle, you can see his thumb just moving around and hitting those reg keys like holy smokes. But that's, and I'm not really good at playing regs while playing dance music, like the whole sort of,
like keeping a rhythm with them kind of thing?
Yeah, kind of keeping a rhythm with them. I use it a lot on slow airs, but it's more of a challenge to keep that steady kind of rhythm or do like counter rhythms kind of thing with,
right.
But you can do really creative stuff with the regs. Yeah.
No, I feel like, Mark, like as a Highland Piper, you can just about get this expensive hobby to pay for itself if you play funerals and weddings.
Yeah.
And there's a reasonable amount of work available for that, at least locally, you know.
Right.
Like, I have tried to push small pipes in those kinds of situations, you know, where it's like, you know, the Highland pipes are going to be really loud for you here. I've got this other option, you know.
Yep.
But people have an image in their mind, you know, and when you say bagpipes, most people think Highland bagpipes.
That's right.
So, like, does an uilleann-piper have a chance, you know, to like make a little money back on their investment?
I wouldn't count on it, and I wouldn't use that as a way of selling the idea to your partner.
Right.
It's like, oh no, I'm going to make a lot of money with these, honey, I swear.
These pipes are even more expensive, and I'll have even fewer gigs,
That's right. I mean, I have been asked to play, you know, as an individual, and also, you know, groups of session players will get together and form impromptu bands. I was in a band for the Dunmore Lasses for about 10 years.
Oh, I love that tune. Great choice of the name.
Exactly. So here and there, you do get asked to play, and people know exactly what it is they're asking for, and they want that instrument. We played at a wake with somebody from the Utah Hibernian Society.
Oh, yeah. Those people would know, huh?
Yeah, and they would know, right. I think it was last spring. And it was a group, we kind of put together like a session group, and they were happy to have the pipes there. But no, it's not something people typically seek out for funerals and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, what about, speaking of money, right? If money were no object, is there a dream item or experience for you as an uilleann-piper that you think, now that's the piece of kit I would want, or that's the workshop I would go to, or whatever, you know, if there was no price tag?
Yeah, I think as far as like flat sets, there's a guy, he's originally Australian, he's been making pipes since the early 80s, I think. He's considered like the master maker of flat sets along the lines of some very famous 19th century pipe makers. His name is Jeff Wolf. And he's one of these guys that stopped. Basically, his order list exceeds any human's lifespan.
Yeah.
And so, if that was ever an option, and once in a while, blue moon, a set like that will come up for sale. But like anything in C or B from Jeff would be just heaven. That would be my ultimate dream. And there's some people that have there's a guy called Derek Gleeson in Ireland who. I think he trained with Jeff for a while, and he's making really fabulous flat sets as well. As far as experiences go, I actually got to go to, in Armagh, it's just over the border in Northern Ireland, there's a William Kennedy Piping Festival. It's every November, and I got to go fall 2019, just before COVID hit, and that was a lot of fun. And they feature all kinds of bagpipes. Including Highland pipes, small pipes, border pipes. They had a guy there from, I think he was playing Macedonian pipes or something.
Oh, really?
People from France playing medieval bagpipes. A lot of uilleann-pipers, of course, and that's just a gas. That's a great festival.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, and there's a big one in France too. What's that place called? I can't remember now, but it's another one of these international piping fests. I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Do you feel like going to those kinds of events opened up your interest in even more? Like, are you now looking at like French musettes and stuff? Like, are you are you done? Have you found your stuff?
I think I'm done. I can be mediocre on a handful of instruments or many instruments.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to get back into Highland piping, or at least explore. Like, I'm actually kind of small pipe curious because, I literally don't remember how to play the Highland pipes anymore. It's been so long.
Yeah.
I mean, I still have my practice channel. I still have my original set with the old sheepskin bag, and they're all dried out. And they have the nasty faux ivory that's orange.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
becomes sought after over eventually though, because it's.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. It's like it's so ugly, but some people really seek that out.
Oh, that's
It
hilarious.
speaks to the age of the pipes, and so it's like it's kind of a badge of honor to be able to walk into the circle with that crazy orange color.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, they're Hardys, and then I had a Granger chanter from the early 70s, I think. I've still got the stuff. But I'd love to try some, like small pipes or border pipes or something like that. I think that would be interesting to get back into that.
Yeah. Well, that's where I'm hoping this little group that I'm trying to kind of pull people together, because like we're all so spread out, but if enough of us gathered together, we could bring our pipes and be like, well, here's what these ones are like, and it gives all of us a chance to try them out a little more and look at them and decide what we want to buy,
Yeah, well, keep me posted, because I'd be very interested in joining in on that.
For sure will. Now, I listen to a lot of Jarlath Henderson myself.
Oh, yeah.
Is he as popular within uilleann piping circles official than as he is for me? Because, like, to some degree, like, I don't know for sure, right? Like, I know I like it, but he's a respected guy.
Oh, yes, very much so. Yeah, in fact, he was doing some duet stuff with a small piper, or maybe the guy played border pipes. I don't remember. I can't remember his name.
He's played with Ross Ainsley a bit, and
Ross Ainsley.
I think he's played with Bridget Campbell as well. Now I think of it, having mentioned her just a minute ago too.
Yeah. In fact, she was at that thing in Armagh that I went to.
Oh, was she?
If it's the same person I'm thinking of.
I bet that would make sense. It sounds like, not that I know her or anything like that, right? But it sounds like, I know that a big part of like her recent album that she put out was that she traveled through, what was it? I want to say Romania, but that might be wrong. Traveled through, the rest of Europe a bit, everything east of the British Isles is the rest of Europe to me, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
She traveled somewhere over there in that entire hemisphere of the earth and picked up some piping tradition and brought it back, kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that would make sense.
Yeah, it's just amazing how many different types of pipes there are.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
Well, on that note, any other favorite uilleann pipers that you love listening to that you'd suggest that listeners, if they want to listen to some more good uilleann piping, that you'd recommend?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many. I mean, the old classics as well as up-and-coming pipers. I mean, there's like Seamus Ennis, you can't go wrong. Willie Clancy would be the two kind of greats who, mid-early 20th century. And of course, we have lots of recordings of them too, which is fortunate. There's people who were like the original, one of the most revered pipers was Patsy Toohey, but he was playing around the turn of the last century up through the 20s. I think he died in the 20s, and so there are recordings of him that were made on those Edison wax cylinders.
Oh yeah.
So they sound kind of terrible. You have to really. And some people have tried cleaning up the audio so you can actually hear what he's doing, but the guy was just unbelievable, like an absolute virtuoso, and he lived most of his life in the States.
Isn't that kind of thing amazing? It makes you wonder, like, how many just amazing treasures of performance have existed throughout human history that we have no idea,
Yeah, just never got recorded, just lost to history, exactly. Yeah. As far as contemporary pipers go, so we've an old friend of ours in the piping club, David Power. He's been here a couple of times to Salt Lake. This Mick O'Brien, he's a lovely piper. Young and upcoming piper is Park Keane, and he just came out with an album and his father is a well-known piper, in fact, and so was his grandfather. And he's really kind of dialed in these older piping styles in a way I haven't heard a young player do in a long, long time. It's really pretty fabulous. So there's just so much out there. If you go to Bandcamp or something, a lot of them will sell their recordings on Bandcamp, and you just type in Uilleann and see what pops up, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. I think I heard, I think it was Uilleann-Mark who said that, like, to get a really great musician, you need 3 generations of musicians.
Yeah, right, yeah. If you go to Peabody Uilleann's website, and it's NPU, I don't know what the URL is exactly.
So I'll look it up and put it in the show notes, so anybody wants to go there, they can just click on it.
They have tons and tons of videos online, including instructional videos. They get, well-known pipers who are passing through town to record tunes and, like tune teaching. They have recorded loads of series of like public performances, mostly in Dublin, over the years, pipers and also other instruments. And I think it's all publicly accessible. I don't think you have to be a member. I think they opened that up during COVID. And they did this great Piping from the Parlor series during COVID where they would, ask pipers around the world to record a few tunes. And I mean, there's just so many hours of fabulous piping on there. You could spend weeks and weeks just listening to that.
Well, it sounds to me like for myself and for my fellow Highland Pipers who are uilleann-curious, the advice from here is not unlike deciding to get a tattoo, where advice might be like have it drawn up and put it by your bedside table and look at that image every day for a year and see if you still love it, right? Like listen to uilleann piping a ton, and if you still love it, you got to go for it.
And get a whistle in the meantime. That's all you need to get the tunes in your head. I mean, and get the ornamentation under your fingers, really.
And actually, I don't know if I made this clear enough before, but there's, like, I'm sure any whistle would work, but I'll put it in the show notes again. There's a company called Lear Whistles out of Ireland that make it might be like a little higher quality than like your standard Fadog kind of whistle. And they did give us a discount code, 10% off. And the code is Heritage Bagpipes. So I'll put that in the show notes again too. It was nice of them. So if anybody wants a little slightly fancier whistle, feel free to use it.
And whistles are like anything. You can spend as much as you want to, I guess.
Right, yeah.
There's a guy called Jerry Freeman who tweaks commercial whistles and improves them.
Oh, that's 300% cool niche to be in.
Yeah, and they play really well. They play as well as super expensive whistles. And I don't think he had a website, then he didn't. If you Google him, he's got information on that Schiff and Fipple board somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jerry Freeman, he makes some really nice stuff.
I'll Google him too if I can find a direct link to either his info on Schiff and Fipple or something. I'll put that in the show notes too for folks.
Yeah, that's a great way to go too, because commercial whistles, some of them might be in tune, some of them might not be. He cleans up the airway, and it's really good stuff.
Well, Mark, usually with these interviews, I kind of have it fade in on a set of drones and then fade out again on a set of drones. Maybe for fun for this one, I'll do uilleann-pipe drones. I'll just get a sample from my friend Jeremy or something who has some uilleann-pipes.
There you go.
But and no pressure to come up with something profound, right? But is there anything that you'd like to say, about music, about uilleann-pipes, about anything, before we kind of fade out?
I just say, if this is something you really want to do, don't be dissuaded. It may seem tough, but it's very doable. They're very accessible, and it just takes some time and dedication. That's all.